Investigators have found practically all nuclear reactors in the European Union need safety improvements, repairs, or upgrades. The European Commission undertook stress tests on the reactors after the disaster at Fukushima Daiichi. Their safety review exposed hundreds of problems. NHK World's Takashi Ichinose reports from Brussels.
Nuclear experts examined the reactor to see how prepared they were to withstand extreme situations: flooding, earthquakes, airplane crashes. The stress test covered 143 reactors. They found nearly all of them need improvements.
We did this intensively and thoroughly. We can conclude that there is room for improvement of safety for most of the nuclear power plants.
The European Commission compiled their findings in the final report for the European heads of states. The report criticized several countries for failing to implement safety measures adopted in the wake of the accidents at 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl. It found if plants in Sweden and Finland lost power, the operators would have less than an hour to restore safety systems before catastrophic damage. The experts identified problems with earthquake detection systems in France, the country with the highest concentration of nuclear plants. The report estimates fixing those problems will cost up to 25 billion euros, about $32 billion. The report doesn't go as far as recommending the immediate closure of specific plants. Still, European leaders say member states need to act quickly.
We should get together with the operators and the regulatory authorities to act rapidly so that the highest possible standards can be guaranteed very soon.
Paying for safety improvements may be extremely difficult in the light of Europe's debt crisis. That put extra pressure on national budgets. The problems outlined and the costs of fixing them may amplify Europeans' concerns about nuclear power. Takashi Ichinose, NHK World, Brussels.
Japanese researchers say they may have found a clue to unraveling the mystery behind what magnified the tsunami that struck northeastern Japan last year. The key was an active undersea fault. The March 11th earthquake triggered a tsunami that inundated large sections of the Pacific coastline in the Kanto and Tohoku regions. These computer graphics simulate how high the waves would have been based on the conventional theory that tectonic movement caused the waves. But according to this theory, simulations of the tsunami in northern Tohoku indicate that the waves were much lower than the actually observed 20 meters. Professor Emeritus Takashi Nakata of Hiroshima University wanted to find out why this theory fails to explain how the tsunami were magnified. He discovered a previously undetected active undersea fault along the coastline. The conventional theory was that a tectonic plate on the landward side moved drastically, triggering a 5-meter tsunami. Nakata simulated what would have happened if the active fault shifted along with the plate movement. His simulations were able to recreate what actually happened. He says attention should be paid to similar undersea faults. One is the Nankai Trough, where a mega quake is predicted. These red lines are believed to be such faults running from the Tokai region to off Kyushu.
I think we can more realistically prepare for future disasters if we take measures based on simulations that active faults can cause tsunami.
Professor Nakata says researchers need to examine such undersea faults as soon as possible.
The Nuclear Regulation Authority is considering an on-site investigation of potentially active faults near a nuclear power plant under construction in Aomori Prefecture, northern Japan. Authority Chairman Shunichi Tanaka said on Wednesday that any doubts about active faults near nuclear plants must be cleared. He said the authority may order the operator Electric Power Development Company to reinvestigate potentially active faults if necessary. He also said the authority may decide instead to conduct an on-site investigation at the Ohma plant. The remarks came just 2 days after construction resumed at the plant. The work was suspended in the wake of last year's nuclear disaster in Fukushima. Electric Power Development Company says there are no active faults under the compound. But some experts have pointed out that a major active fault off the coast could trigger movement in a fault beneath the Ohma plant. The Nuclear Authority is already planning on-site investigations of 6 nuclear facilities, including the OE plant. The OE plant was the first to resume operation after last year's disaster at Fukushima Daiichi.
One day some twisted son of a bitch is bound to teach you a thing or two about living in this cold, godforsaken world.
And are the health concerns that people face in the future, is there a realistic attitude towards that?
No, the nuclear industry is saying that there'll be about 100 cancers as a result of these 4 nuclear accidents, and frankly, I've said, and my analysis shows that it'll be closer to 1 million. So the same people they trusted back before the accident are telling them now. First, they told them an accident couldn't happen, and now they're telling them that the consequences are minimal. And there's a great distrust for both Tokyo Electric and NISA, the regulator, the equivalent of our Nuclear Regulatory Commission. They simply don't trust their authorities and are looking elsewhere for scientific information.
Well, why would you think 1 million people would get cancer?
You know, I got that number from going back over the records on 3 Mile Island in Chernobyl, and did some ratios. Of course, this accident released something on the order of 100 to 1,000 times more radiation than TMI, and comparable levels, perhaps 3 times more noble gases than Chernobyl, and perhaps a little bit less cesium than Chernobyl, but comparable, coupled with the fact that it's a higher population density in Japan than at either site. There's some epidemiological data out of TMI that shows a statistically meaningful 20% increase in lung cancer in the 5 years after the accident by Dr. Stephen Wing down in North Carolina. So using that evidence and ratioing for the amount that was released in the population density, I'm coming up with something on the order of 1 million cancers. We're seeing that already. There was 4,000 kids were tested just in the last couple of months, and almost half of them had thyroid nodules. Now, normally, about 1 or 2% of kids would have thyroid nodules. So we're seeing an enormous increase on a cancer precursor for thyroid cancers in a sample size of about 4,000 kids. So I'm also seeing samples from indoor dust. We're getting people sending us vacuum cleaner bags, and the indoor dust in these homes is astronomical. One bag that was tested over in Europe came back with 100,000 disintegrations every second in a 2-pound vacuum cleaner bag. So that's on the floors in their home, and of course the Japanese sleep on the floor and essentially live on the floor, where they sit on the floor and things like that. So internal contamination in Japan will be a significant factor, and neither the Japanese government nor the International Atomic Energy Agency has taken that into account when they do their numbers. The 4 units on site that are that blew up are going to cost around $70 to $100 billion, and the question is, do you spend it now and risk high exposures to people for what gain, or do you entomb these plants with concrete and come back in 100 years? That's a question the Japanese have yet to answer.
What would you do?
I would entomb them and come back later. Why would you want to dismantle them? Certainly there's the visual impact and the embarrassment and things like that. But to my mind now, the lives of the people going to clean up and the potential for cancers outweighs that. And I would do basically what we've done at Chernobyl, which is to put a sarcophagus around it, basically fill them with concrete. I would also then bore under the plants and continually withdraw the groundwater because there's still going to be seepage of radioactive material into the ocean and into the groundwater, and keep that from seeping out into the environment. But I just can't justify in my own mind exposing, tens of thousands of Japanese workers to high levels of radiation for just the physical effect of cleaning this plant up.
One day some twisted son of a bitch is bound to teach you a thing or two about living in this cold, godforsaken world.
The European Union carried out stress tests to ensure a nuclear disaster like the one that occurred at Japan's Fukushima plant is not repeated on European soil. 18 nations took part in the study, all 14 EU states that operate nuclear power plants, as well as Lithuania, Switzerland, Ukraine and Croatia. The big message? Nearly all of the 134 reactors across 68 sites tested require safety upgrades. These are needed to cope with extreme emergencies such as natural disasters, explosions and even malicious attacks. Now, France is coming under particular scrutiny. It is Europe's largest nuclear energy producer, relying on reactors for more than 3/4 of its electricity. Every single one of its 58 reactors in 19 sites were found to have specific safety failings.
The French particularly have had many accidents which have not been reported in the past. It used to be that in France, if you were skeptical about nuclear power, it was almost the equivalent of being seditious. But in fact, the French are beginning to worry, especially about Fessenheim, which is a reactor on the border near Strasbourg in Germany. That's on a fault line. It's on a river that could flood. There are problems there, but there are problems throughout Europe, and I think this report will not give many of them a clean bill of health.
The need for improvements is urgent. Most of the European reactors are located in high population areas where more than 100,000 people live within a circle of 30 kilometers. All in all, the report estimates it will cost up to $32 billion to fix all of the problems across Europe's nuclear sites.
Have you ever noticed how weird it starts to get when you just stop breathing?